What's up guys, this is Ultimate Device Vids, and today in this video we're going to be doing a battery drain test between every iPhone generation on iOS 15.2. So as always, whenever Apple releases a major new iOS update, I like to check in and see how the battery performance is across the board on all currently supported iPhone generations. And like usual, we'll be sticking to the base model phone from each lineup, as including the Pro, Plus, and SE models would just be a little too chaotic for this video. So first things first, as you can see, all devices, of course, are running iOS 15.2. Also, True Tone, Night Shift, and Auto Brightness are disabled on all of these devices. And as I often mention in battery test videos, a device's battery performance is entirely dependent on the age of the battery in the device. So that's all something you should keep in mind. And all the devices we're using in this video show pretty high battery health numbers, as you can see. And the brightness on all of these devices is set as close to the same as I could get. It's particularly difficult to match the brightness of an OLED display to an LCD display using the tools that I use, but I did my best to make them as similar as possible. So rest assured, any minor differences between the display brightnesses of these devices is barely noticeable, if noticeable at all. And also, the volume is turned down on all of them. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go ahead and turn off the power sources that these devices are connected to. We'll get rid of the power cables. And as usual, we're going to kick things off with 1 hour of YouTube video streaming, all streaming the same video at 1080p quality, full screen. And checking in after a full hour of YouTube video streaming, as you can see, the percentages go straight down the line of generations from newest to oldest, with the 12 and 13 actually being both tied at 95%. So with all devices holding up pretty good, we're going to move on to 1 hour of Instagram. So for the first 10 minutes, we're going to be looking through stories, and for the remainder of the hour, we'll be scrolling through posts. And something else you should also always keep in mind when watching battery test videos is that there's always a variety of varying factors that contribute to how your battery life is going to be. Things like what you do on your device, the age of the battery in your device, the brightness of your screen, cell signal strength, etc. all play a very big role in how your battery life is going to be. And of course, I'm controlling as many of these variables as I can to get the most accurate results. All these devices are connected to the very same Wi-Fi network. As I said earlier, the brightness is set as close to the same as I could get on all these devices as well. There's also no SIM cards in any of these phones to create a level playing field in regards to cell signal strength drainage. So you should definitely keep in mind that in the real world, of course, factors will vary all over the place. But even in a hyper-controlled test like this, there's always going to be minor variables that throw each device off a little bit. So rather than analyzing the results of this test super carefully, you should just take it as gauging overall battery performance on these devices in comparison to one another on iOS 15.2. And alright, after a full hour of Instagram checking in, as you can see, the newer devices are definitely holding up pretty good, while the older devices are starting to drop a little bit more noticeably in terms of percentage. But with all devices still going strong, all still above that 50% mark, we're going to move on to 1 hour of Minecraft. And because I can only interact with so many devices at a time, for the first 30 minutes of playing Minecraft, I interact with the 3 newest devices, and for the second 30 minutes, I interacted with the 4 older devices. So that way, all the devices get the same amount of app interaction versus just idle time in the application. And quick note, if you guys are regular viewers of my battery test videos, you may notice some of the devices last longer in this video in comparison to some of my older tests. And that's not because of iOS 15.2, that's because Minecraft in a recent update changed the default render distance in the game to lower levels. And this is done to improve speed and battery performance in the game. This setting determines how much area surrounding you in the game is rendered out. And I've noticed this actually has a pretty substantial impact on newer devices in particular, as that render setting's new default is a lot lower than the previous default on, again, those newer devices. The new default render setting on the older devices is definitely less of a gap in comparison to the previous default on, again, those older devices, so you see less of a difference there. But once again, this only applies to people that have watched my earlier battery test videos. And checking in after a full hour of playing Minecraft, as you can see, once again, straight down the line in terms of generations. Of course, the newer generation's doing considerably better. Next up, we're going to head on over to Safari for 1 hour of web browsing. So for the first 30 minutes, we're going to be loading new web pages and scrolling through web pages on apple.com. And for the second 30 minutes, we're going to be doing that on theverge.com. And 3 hours and 42 minutes into the test, the iPhone 6S dies. And checking in after a full hour of web browsing, as you can see, the same trends are continuing, with the iPhone 7 just barely hanging on at 4% at this point. So we're going to move on to to 30 minutes of playing Subway Surfers. And once again, for the first half of this 30 minutes, I'll interact with the 3 newer devices. And for the second half, I'll interact with the 3 older devices that are still on. And 4 hours and 17 minutes into the test, the iPhone 7 dies. But after closing out the remainder of the 30 minutes of Subway Surfers, checking in, as you can see with the iPhone 8 through the 13 being the only ones left remaining, we'll go ahead and move on to 10 minutes of playing Temple Run, with ads appearing in between each round of the game. And of course, as usual, for the first 5 minutes, we'll interact with the 3 newer devices, and for the second 5 minutes, the 2 older devices. And after 10 minutes of Temple Run checking in, you can see there the iPhone 8 is barely hanging on at 5% at this point. Next up, we'll head on over to PUBG for an hour. As usual, for the first 30 minutes, we'll interact with the 3 newest devices and the older devices for the second 30 minutes. And no surprise, 4 hours and 54 minutes into the test, the iPhone 8 is the next device to die. And after closing out the remainder of the hour of PUBG checking in, as you can see, the iPhone XR is just barely hanging on at 2%, while the other devices just, again, steady progression down the line of generations. So with the first round of the battery test complete, we'll head back to YouTube for our second scheduled hour of YouTube video streaming. Once again, 1080p quality, full screen, and 5 hours and 52 minutes into the test, the XR dies. And checking in after the second hour of YouTube video streaming, as you can see there, the 11 is now barely hanging on at 6%, while the 12 is at 24%, and the 13 is at 37%. So we'll move on to our second scheduled hour of Instagram. Once again, for the first 10 minutes, we'll be looking through stories, and for the remainder of the hour, we'll be scrolling through posts. 7 hours and 14 minutes into the test, the iPhone 11 dies. And after a full hour of Instagram, the 12 is at 13%, and the 13 is at 27%. So we'll head back to Minecraft for our second scheduled hour of playing the game. And even though there's no older devices remaining at this point, this test was designed to accommodate if there were. So 30 minutes into the test, we'll stop interacting with the newer devices. And 8 hours and 34 minutes into the test, the iPhone 12 dies. And after finishing the remainder of the hour of Minecraft, the iPhone 13 is now at 16%. So with the iPhone 13 being the only device remaining, we're going to head back to Safari for our second scheduled hour of web browsing, once again on Apple.com and TheVerge.com. This causes the iPhone 13 to lose 6%, leaving it at 10%. So we're going to move on to our second 30 minutes of playing Subway Surfers. Once again, even though there's no other devices remaining that are older, 15 minutes into the test, we'll stop interacting because I did design the test that way. Anyways, this leaves the iPhone 13 with 4%, so just barely hanging on. We'll head back to Temple Run for, again, another 10 minutes of playing the game with ads appearing in between each round. And once again, for the same reason I just explained, we'll play for the first 5 minutes, then leave the app open for the remainder. This causes the 13 to only lose 1%, it now being at 3%. So we'll head back to PUBG for our second scheduled hour of playing the game. And 10 hours and 38 minutes into the test, the iPhone 13 dies. And there you guys have it for the battery drain test on iOS 15.2. And once again, you just see that steady progression down the line of each newer generation doing better than the previous. And as usual, I like to conclude with a 12-hour standby test. So this involves putting all devices to sleep for 12 hours and seeing how the battery holds up in that state. Now, once again, this also largely depends on a variety of varying factors. Factors like any processes that you might have running in the background, notifications that you're getting on your device, cell signal strength, and just a whole host of other factors all play a very big role in how a device will perform in this environment. Of course, I'm doing this test in a very controlled environment. All these devices are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. As I mentioned earlier, there's no SIM cards in any of these devices to create a level playing field in regards to cell signal strength drainage. And they also have the very same notification settings configured on all of them, as you can see across the board. But once again, as I said before, just keep in mind that, of course, in the real world, factors will vary all over the place for sure. And with all devices charged back up to 100%, we're going to go ahead and turn off the power sources that these devices are connected to. We'll get rid of the power cables, and we'll just put all devices to sleep here, start a stopwatch, and come back in 12 hours. And after 12 hours checking in, here are the battery percentages. All right, everybody, that just about wraps it up for this video. As always, if you guys are using any of these devices on iOS 15.2, let me know down below in the comments section how the battery performance is for you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.